Some people move through the world with a quality of stillness that is hard to explain. Not passivity, they are present, engaged, warm. But underneath the warmth, there is something else. Something that doesn't move even when everything around it does. Something that holds. Audrey Hepburn had that quality. People who met her professionally, on film sets, at events, in the long social world of mid-century Hollywood, noticed it consistently and described it in similar terms. She was genuinely present with people. She listened in a way that felt complete. There was no urgency underneath her attention, no restlessness, no sense that she was already thinking about the next thing. She was simply there, fully, and the effect of that on people was often more profound than they expected. Part of this quality, people who knew her well, believed, came from her faith. Not a formal institutional kind, though she had been raised in a Christian tradition and held to it in her way. More something private, a settled conviction about what mattered and why, about the existence of something larger than any individual life, about the ultimate reliability of goodness in the world, even when immediate circumstances offered contradictory evidence. She had reason to test that conviction. She had grown up during World War II in the Netherlands, under German occupation, a childhood that included genuine deprivation and fear, that left her underweight and marked in ways that lasted. She had lost people. She had seen her family's world turned upside down before she was 10 years old. And she carried all of it into the life that came after. The training in London, the early theater work, the unexpected rise to global stardom in the 1950s. Quietly, without making it the center of her identity, but carrying it nonetheless. What those who knew her observed was that the faith she held, the settled belief in something good underneath everything, was not the faith of someone who had been protected from hard things. It was the faith of someone who had been through them, who had had reason to abandon it, and hadn't, who had found, on the other side of genuine difficulty, that the belief held not unchanged, but intact, and who carried that finding forward quietly as a kind of permanent foundation. In her later years, when she left the film world and dedicated most of her time and energy to humanitarian work for UNICEF, traveling to some of the most difficult places in the world to witness and speak for children living in poverty, she talked about what sustained her in that work. And what she consistently pointed to was not strategy or strength or any particular quality of her own. It was a belief that it mattered, that goodness done in the world was not futile, that the effort to alleviate suffering was grounded in something real, some underlying order in which such effort was not random kindness thrown into chaos, but participation in something that already existed. That was the faith that held her, not a guarantee of good outcomes, not certainty that any particular effort would succeed, just the belief that it mattered, that the direction was right, even when the progress was slow, that underneath the suffering she witnessed, something else was still true. Maybe you felt that kind of faith, or felt its absence. Maybe there is something in your own life that functions the way Audrey Hepburn's faith functioned for her. A belief about the world that holds you, not because it has been proven to your satisfaction, Not because the evidence is always clean, but because it corresponds to something deep in your own experience that you recognize as true. A sense that goodness matters. A sense that people are, underneath their worst moments, trying. A sense that the relationships you have tended, the kindnesses you have given, the work you have done with honesty and care, that none of it is simply lost, even when its effects are invisible. That kind of faith doesn't require a religion exactly. Many people hold it without a formal structure around it. It's more like a conviction about the nature of things, that effort toward what is good is not futile, that love given is not wasted, that a life lived with some measure of integrity accumulates into something real, even if no one gives it a particular name. And maybe, at this stage of your life, the question of what you really believe, underneath everything, has become more present than it was in the busy middle years. The years when there was always something more immediately pressing, some goal to reach or problem to solve or responsibility to manage, and the deeper questions could be deferred without too much discomfort. Those years are changing now, or have changed, and the questions that were easy to defer are a little harder to defer. What do you believe about what happens when we die? What do you believe about whether your life mattered in any lasting sense? What do you believe carries forward from you, through you, beyond you? These are not comfortable questions. Audrey Hepburn had arrived at answers that worked for her, not because the questions were easy, but because she had taken the time, through difficulty and through reflection, to figure out what she actually believed, rather than what she was supposed to believe or what was convenient to believe. And those settled beliefs gave her something to stand on, a foundation that didn't shift when the ground around it shifted. If you don't yet have that kind of settled foundation, maybe this is the time to look for it. Not by adopting someone else's answers, those tend not to hold when things get hard, but by sitting quietly with the questions themselves. What have you experienced in your life that points towards something real underneath it all? What moments of genuine grace, of unexpected beauty, or unexpected help, or unexpected peace that had no obvious explanation have you been given? What do you find yourself turning toward in the quiet hours when you are most honest with yourself about what you believe? Audrey Hepburn's faith was not a conclusion she had reasoned her way to. It was something she had found through experience and attention and the particular way that hard things survived sometimes clarify what is true. And it gave her the quality of stillness that people noticed, the sense of someone who had found her ground and was standing on it fully, without urgency or anxiety. That ground is available to you too. It may already be more present than you've been giving it credit for. Sometimes the things we believe most deeply are the ones we've never quite taken the time to name, because naming them makes them feel more fragile than they actually are. But naming them, it often turns out, makes them stronger, more accessible, more able to function as the foundation they have always quietly been. So take a slow breath, and maybe This week, take a little time with the question of what you believe. Not to arrive at certainty, that's not usually how it works. Just to be more honest, more deliberate, more present with what is already there. The ground beneath your feet. That's always a good thing to know. There's one more thing Audrey Hepburn demonstrated in the way she lived that's worth sitting with here. She didn't keep her faith private in the sense of keeping it separate from her actions. What she believed expressed itself in what she did, in how she treated people, in the causes she devoted herself to, in the particular quality of presence she brought to her work for children in places the world mostly forgot. Her faith was not just a private comfort, it was a direction. That's one way to think about what a real belief looks like versus a theoretical one. A real belief, one that genuinely grounds you, tends to show up in what you do. Not necessarily in grand gestures, but in the particular way you treat people when it costs you something. In the causes you give your time to, even when the return is invisible. In the small, consistent choices you make day after day that reflect what you actually think matters. Audrey Hepburn spent the last years of her life in places that were hard to be in. Refugee camps, drought-stricken regions, communities where children were dying in ways that no amount of celebrity presence could immediately fix. She went anyway. Not because she thought her presence was sufficient, but because she believed the witnessing mattered. That being there, saying, "I have seen this and I will not look away," was itself a form of participation in what was good. You don't have to travel to difficult places to live something like this. But the principle holds at any scale. The belief that goodness matters, expressed through small, consistent, costly choices, costly in time, in attention, in the willingness to stay present with something difficult, is exactly what Audrey Hepburn was demonstrating. And it's exactly what's available to anyone at any stage of life, in any circumstances. If you're watching this tonight, and you feel that your faith, whatever form it takes, has been more a private comfort than an active direction, maybe this is the week to let it be both. To let what you believe about what matters express itself in something you do. A small act of service, a conversation you've been avoiding that needs to happen, a commitment of time to something that matters more than you've been showing. Audrey Hepburn's stillness came from somewhere. It came from believing that the world was, at its base, good, and choosing to act as if that were true, even when immediate evidence suggested otherwise. That choice, made consistently over a lifetime, is what gave her that quality people noticed and remembered. A person who was standing on real ground and knew it. That ground is available to you too. Maybe it's already under your feet. Maybe you just need a quiet moment to feel it. So take a slow breath, and maybe this week take a little time with the question of what you believe and how you might let it show up in what you do. That's always a good beginning.